Hello, everybody, and welcome to my session on student voice in the classroom. Endearingly titled, I'm Hearing Voices. You can make whatever movie reference or whatever that you have to go with that. So we're going to talk a little bit today about student voice in the classroom. But before we start, let me introduce myself. I'm Susan Vincentz, and I am a technology integration specialist or a tech coach. I'm here in the Louisville area in Kentucky. I serve in one of our Christian school systems. We have 3 campuses, 2 in the Louisville area and 1 over in New Albany, Indiana. So I have been with that school system for 4 years. I've been a tech coach for over 15 years. So I enjoy helping teachers learn and how to effectively and productively make things easier for themselves and ultimately reach their students and feel confident about that. So you can also find me over in the podcasting world through the Ask the Tech Coach podcast, where I co-host that with my friend and co-host Jeffrey Bradbury. So check us out over there if you are a podcast listener. So thinking about how our students communicate with us, there's so many ways, and as educators, we spend a lot of time in the classroom modeling good communication skills, and a lot of times we do that through the written word. And many times, whether that be good, bad, whatever, we forget that voice. We forget student voice, or even as tech coaches or instructional coaches, many times we forget the teacher voice. We have them communicate with us via email, but sometimes we forget that those verbal conversations mean so much more sometimes than that written communication. So that's what we want to look at today. They submit students a typewritten document or a nicely designed multimedia product, whether it be a Google slide or some kind of graphic representation, or they're raising their hands in class, and again, they're writing on a piece of paper, but really, isn't there more to it? So why don't we let our students use their voice? So, we're in a world now where video, podcasting, and digital communication is so much more prevalent. And it's important that we give our students those learning opportunities as we continue moving forward and encouraging them to be the professionals that we want them to be to succeed in life and be a productive citizen here in our world. And as things happen in our world, they need to be able to communicate effectively. Obviously, written word is totally still important. But I want us to focus a little bit and just kind of turn our mind a little bit on that actual audible voice, and thinking of this with your actual students, or if you're an administrator or a coach, thinking of that with the teachers that you work with and having those meaningful conversations in spoken word rather than written word all the time. So why should we think about this? Why should we think about student voices? Well, as I alluded to earlier, employees are definitely looking for students who know how to incorporate those 4 C's. Talking about from the ISTE standards, the International Society for Technology and Education, thinking about critical thinking, creativity and communication, and collaboration. And of course, that communication is a huge one, and that's what we're focusing on today. And then Jennifer Hall, who is a National Board Certified Teacher, who wrote this in eSchool News not too long ago in the article, 5 Tools to Amplify Student Voice, she states that, a 5th C could also even be there, and that's choice. And if our scholars or our students have a choice, then they have a voice. And you hear so much about right now through hybrid teaching, virtual teaching, blended learning, is giving students that choice. Giving them their own autonomy to choose how they want to learn and how they need to express themselves. And not only students with special needs, but our students across the board. Sometimes just expressing themselves in that spoken word again, means a lot more. And in turn, we'll talk about this more in a few minutes, it in turn a lot of times makes them an even better writer in the long run. So in this session today, we want to talk about how we amplify student voice. So we've talked about the what, the why. Now, how are we going to do that? So we're going to focus on 6 main tools. And some of these you may have heard of, some of these you may not have thought about. Some of them you may not have thought about in years. I kind of dug some up from the little digital archives here. So we're going to talk about 6 tools that we can use to amplify student voice in your classroom. So stay with me, and there will be links to all these in the session materials down below in the Teachable platform. So all the links, all of the resources that I refer to, they'll all be available to you, as well as the slide deck. So stay tuned and enjoy as we talk through some of these tools on how we can amplify student voice in our classroom. So the first one that we want to focus on here is Mote. Mote is fairly new. As of early 2020 or mid 2020, right about the time the pandemic hit, and many schools, a majority of schools, had gone virtual, I started seeing things about this brand new Google Chrome extension. And I was quite intrigued because it was allowing us as teachers to go into a Google Doc, which we were using in our school system. We're a Google Workspace for Education district. And we were using the comment feature in Google Docs, Google Slides, as students produced materials. We were also using Google Classroom and the feedback features there. But of course it was typewritten word. And I know we talk to our students sometimes about how to communicate via written word professionally and come across as intelligent, knowing what you're talking about, and coming across as appropriate and not abrasive. Because we talk about how sometimes written word can be assertive or abrasive when you don't necessarily intend for it to be that way. So Mote, this brand new extension that came along, it allows users to add audio comments in Google Tools. So all Google Docs, Slides, Classroom, and Google Forms. And they are building and building new things inside of that extension as they go along. It is an awesome tool, and I would encourage you to check it out. So you have to install the extension. And it can be used, of course, by teachers and students as long as that extension is installed. So you would need to, go through your Google admin folks, whether that's in your IT department or your curriculum department, and find out what the protocol is to install these extensions. But it's a quick and easy install. And then it allows you to record the audio notes, and then it can be done in a comment, like we said in a Google tool. Or if you just open up the website and go to mote.com and go through that extension, it will allow you to record right then and there in the extension. So as you can see in the picture, I have one screenshot here of Google Classroom. And this is where I would go to make an assignment in Google Classroom. And right here is my Mote extension. And if I want to use my voice as the teacher to provide verbal instructions, I'm able to use that Mote extension to do so. And then here's an example of a Google Doc. And if I click the comment button, either to the side as we normally would, or up in the top menu, it's going to give me now the option to click my Mote extension right attached to that, and I can leave a verbal comment. This is awesome for collaborative tools. Even when a group of you all as adults are getting together to, plan and collaborate on a document, that verbal spoken word can go sometimes a much longer way than some of the abrasive written word that we end up with, whether it is intentional or not. So there is a free version of Mote. So, if you're just starting out, all you have to do, install the extension, sign in with your Google account, and you can go on. And it'll allow you to record on any web page. Use the Google integrations, but it only gives you 30 seconds worth of recording time. And for many of you, the free version is going to be fine and sufficient. You're not going to, in a lot of cases, especially with those littler students, you're not going to leave much more than a 30-second long comment in most cases. And then there's some paid versions that you can go at, but there's also referral programs out there. There's free trials. So sign up for those free trials and get yourself out there trying these tools. I highly recommend Mote. Very new and on the horizon, and really, really stepping up their game over the past 18 months or so. So get out there and check them out, mote.com. And then here's one that's been around for quite a while. And many of us, if you're listening to me giving this session, your head might have been in a hole somewhere or under a rock if you have not heard of FlipGrid. If you haven't heard of FlipGrid, I highly recommend you take a look at it. So again, there will be links down below in the session material. So FlipGrid allows for audio and video collaboration. And of course, it's a free and effective way to create a discussion. So, many times we create those discussions using Google Classroom or whatever learning management system we have. FlipGrid allows you to take that up to a 2.0 level and make it verbal. So you're able to see and hear from all of your students in a collaborative environment, and all of the students have a voice to share. And they don't have to use the camera, or whether you require it, whatever. That's definitely up to you as a teacher. And then there's actually a new item that's been added for 2021. It's called FlipGrid Lenses. And it's just a fun filtering tool as they submit their responses to whatever assignment you have given them. It lets them filter in some AI capabilities to transport them into various locations so they can be in outer space, sort of like the background images in a Zoom call. You can attach those similarly into a Google Meet. So a link to that video is included here in the slides for you to take a look at. And then I have a screenshot here of an example FlipGrid, and we're not going to listen to it during this session today, but you can kind of just get an idea of what this looks like. So here I was. This was my Christian Academy school system family. This was actually one of the FlipGrids I did as the tech coach while we were out on virtual learning back in the spring of 2020. After we had been out for several weeks and realizing we probably were not going to come back, I thought this was a good time to get everybody together and let everyone, teachers, leave an encouraging word for each other. So when I created the assignment, I have to give it a title, and then it allows me to add instructions, and then it allows me as the teacher, or you if you're the teacher, to record a video here, and then it lets me see all of the responses. So as the students respond, you send them the link, and then they respond using the button, and then it records right here under my group. And of course I have names covered up for privacy. It shows you when they submitted it, and then you have all these abilities to upload, export your data. You can print QR codes. So many possibilities using FlipGrid. So if you have not checked FlipGrid out, I highly recommend that you do so. So many resources. If you go to the FlipGrid site itself, so many resources are available that will allow you to share things with your colleagues. They have a blog showing you what's new. This is where I got some of the information about the FlipGrid lenses, and there's new backdrops and so much more on the horizon as you check out the website. So I encourage you to check out FlipGrid. So let's look at number 3, Padlet. Padlet is one of those things that have been around for quite a long time. And yes, Padlet used to be free. It's not free anymore. I believe the free version allows you to only set up 3 lessons or presentations or boards at one time. But it is an awesome collaborative reflection tool. Think about those times in professional development sessions when we got to do this face-to-face, and we would hang the chart paper around the wall, and we would pass out sticky notes to the tables, and we call that chart paper the parking lot. And if there's any reflective comments, any questions that they didn't have the chance to say out loud, it gave the participants a chance to go take that sticky note and put it on the chart paper, which a lot of my colleagues and we called it the parking lot. And that would be where we would refer to later as we wrap things up at the end for reflection and sharing of ideas. So Padlet looks similar to that, and it'll let you create what looks like a little sticky note and put them on the board. And when you share that with your students or teacher colleagues, and you're collaborating together, you can do written word, you can post pictures, but what I really like about this is the audio and screen recorder feature. So much like FlipGrid, students can hit the plus sign when you have shared the board with them, and they're able to record a response to the question or the reflection or the topic and things being presented. And here's what it looks like after I submit a response. And then I would just hit the play button, and it would be able to take my voice, and everybody else could be able to hear it if they so choose, or if the teacher wanted to keep it private, they certainly have that option as well. So this is definitely a great tool for exit slip activities, those end of class reflection type activities, or even just a brainstorming session. You know, if you're trying to gather ideas from students about, you know, what they want to talk about next, or good topics of discussion, or you're meeting with your colleagues and you're planning all of these things for the next big event in the school building. Padlet is a great way to do that, and sometimes the user is better able to explain their ideas using spoken word rather than written text. I know in a lot of ways I communicate better verbally than I do written. When I'm given the task of having to write something up, it makes me a little nervous sometimes. But using spoken word really makes it come alive for me. So for example, I'll tell a little story on myself. In my new school system, this is my 4th year there, and after 3 years, we have to renew our certificate for the private school system that we're working for, and we had to write a philosophy of education paper. And I'm sitting here saying I've been an educator for 20 years. I haven't written a philosophy of education paper for 20 years or more. And I kept teasing my boss saying, can I just tell it to you verbally? We talk about this all the time. But they needed to see my written reflection also. So it's just important that we as tech coaches, us as teachers, that we know our students and figure out the best way they need to express themselves. And obviously written word is still important. But for some of those students, that spoken word is going to engage them and be more meaningful to them in expressing themselves. So that's Padlet. That's number 3. So let's move on to number 4. And this is one that we don't hear a whole lot about sometimes. This was new to me a year or so ago. I think maybe at the FETC conference. I saw a presentation about this and some other that was within another presentation on interactivity. And this is called VideoAnt. And VideoAnt allows students to do an audible reflection to a video. So how many of you ever have heard of Edpuzzle out there? And if you've used Edpuzzle, you know that you can bring in a video and then you can add multiple choice, open-ended type questions throughout that video for students to be able to respond to. VideoAnt is very similar, and the feel of setting it up is even very similar. It entails using a video that you can kind of see here in the picture. I've taken a video about Abraham Lincoln's childhood and his hometown, which is right down the road from where I live here in Kentucky. And then it allows you, if you see these marks, it allows you to add questions where the students can then respond verbally. So these marks are where I have added the question, and you can see the timestamp there. And then the student is allowed to respond there verbally. So as you can see in the example here, it allows them to develop their verbal skills, which then contributes to their writing skills. Because as they're listening to this video, it can be annotated, and as they watch, these annotations can then become great for discussion later, whether that is a verbal discussion or through their writing skills. All right, let's look at number 5. This is one of those that have been around for a while. I kind of refer to it as a little bit of a precursor to FlipGrid. I remember back in my early tech coaching days, this was one of the huge things that were out there for recording student voice. This was way before FlipGrid ever took off, and it's called Voicethread. And it allows the user to upload documents, presentations, images, audio, video. You can upload various things, and very similar to FlipGrid, it allows for the audio and video reflection again on the content that's being discussed. So here are some media sources pictured here that comes from the Voicethread site. You can pull things from Flickr, which is a photo sharing tool, Google Drive, and then the New York Public Library, which you see here in the picture that I have included. You can pull very nice artwork. So this is great for any of you art teachers, humanities teachers out there who are looking for a great way to kind of integrate some technology into your classroom and that student voice. Find these photos, whether it's from the New York Public Library or whether you have the photos saved from something else, put them from an acceptable and appropriate site to pull them from, and bring them here into your Google Drive, and then you can bring them right into Voicethread. So as you do this, you set it up. You as the teacher, again, can record, or you can have written directions, and then you're asking the students to respond to them. And so you see here, I've responded as a student with one of my accounts, and as various students continue responding, you'll see each of their blocks across here. And then depending on the sharing settings that you have set up, you as the teacher may be the only one seeing these responses, or the students are able to see each other's, and then they can respond to each other. So it is really a precursor to FlipGrid, and there's still a lot of good stuff about it. And one of my favorite things is the more of the arts and humanities side of it, where you can pull in these items from the New York Public Library and have these discussions. So let me just click here and kind of show you what this looks like. So when you go to Voicethread, it's an older looking site, but you can register, you can sign in, and this is not one of those that allows you to sign in through Google, but you can sign in, register with your email, and go from there. So notice here, people can add comments whenever they want. You don't have to schedule it. And then their comments will come up with, they have a picture attached. You also have written annotation tools there. And whoever's speaking will come up prominently. And then it'll just continue scrolling through the next person who contributed a comment. And you can see there in the video various ways that you can comment. So it's still a viable tool that's out there, and definitely something I think you should check out. So then number 6, and this is where we really get into the nitty-gritty of student voice, and that's Anchor.fm. Anchor.fm is free, and it's a quick way to create a podcast. Podcasts have really come up on the horizon over the last several years, more and more prominent. Many of us are getting a lot of professional development through podcasts on our commute to work or during our workouts, what have you. And students creating podcasts is going to give them a huge platform in order to express themselves and be able to use their voice, and use those 4 C's to communicate. So Anchor.fm, it records and allows you to edit a podcast episode, however long or short that may be. And it can be done on various devices. So it works on a normal computer, laptop, Chromebooks, and then across tablets, iPads, and so on. So that's why it's so versatile and such an awesome tool in encouraging student voice. And then these podcasts, thinking about the whole process of creating a podcast and using the 4 C's. Obviously, the communication tool and using their voice to record it and expressing themselves in a professional manner and practicing speaking engagements. But then they're also using creativity, critical thinking, and how they need to put it together and what their process is going to be. And then in a lot of cases, they're collaborating with peers in this. And this whole process of production, that's a huge way to use those 4 C's. And if you're a school that talks to teachers about the SAMR model with substitution, augmentation, modification, and then redefinition on top, think about some of that basic stuff that they start out with substitution. And then they work their way up to something like this with a podcast using Anchor.fm or a similar tool. And they're way up there on that R level in redefining that instruction. So I want to show you an example here. And for those of you who may be skeptical, this process can be done within a kindergarten class. Now, they probably need a little guidance, and they need you coaching them along, but it definitely can be done at the kindergarten level. So this is Mrs. Calhoun. From her username here is Kindergarten Calhoun, and she's from Baltimore City, Maryland. And they read the book called The Best Part of Us. And it was inspired by this by Wendy Ewald. And they were able to reflect on their findings after they had read the book. So here's just a little example of what they recorded. And this was all recorded using Anchor.fm.
Episode 2. The best parts of us. The best part of me is my nose. I like my nose because it helps me breathe. If I didn't have my nose, I could smell my grandma's famous cookies. I like it. So, I like the rubbish. Cool. With my hands, I can do a handstand. I like my hands because I play with my cards. The best part of me is my hands.
All right, so we'll just stop it right there. It's about almost 8 minutes long there. So, think about the process that these students went through and how they created. They first of all heard the story, read the book, I'm sure talked about it. And first of all, they used writing. They had to use written word first because they had to write the script. They had to create. And they had to think critically about how they wanted the structure of this podcast to be, what kind of structure they wanted it to take. And then, of course, the critical thinking and the collaboration with each other to, figure out who was going to go when, who was going to do the narration, who was going to share, and just then the communication skills, the practice that went into this. So, as we were saying, Anchor.fm allows you to not only record, But if you noticed on the Best Part of Us excerpt that we listened to, it also allows you to add music. So notice they had a little intro music. And then you can add transitions. You can, if you take a break, what have you. It can be as elaborate or as simple as you want it. And as you could see in Kindergarten Calhoun's group, it was definitely simple with these kindergartners creating this. I just think that's awesome. And those are the things that really touch my heart in watching students get it. When they get using the 4 C's, when they get the process and they start creating and communicating using that little audible voice of theirs, and then all the way up through high school students, college students, and then the adults and teachers that I work with day in and day out, when they finally get it and I do something with them in a professional learning session, and then they can take that and in turn take that into their classroom after I have done it and demonstrated with them, after we have done it together, and then they go and do it with the students. The I do, we do, you do approach. It just means a lot, and it's so engaging. So as we wrap up this session and we think about the 6 tools that we went through, thinking about how we let students use their voice, and we talked about Mote, we talked about FlipGrid, Padlet, VideoAnt, Voicethread, and Anchorfm. Taking these 6 tools, and these are not the only 6 tools that allow student voice. There's so many more out there that we don't have time to fit in just one short session. Thinking about these 6 tools, how will you incorporate student voice in your classroom this year? So I would love to hear from you as you find my contact information within the session materials, within the conference materials, through Twitter. I would love to hear some discussion. How are you going to incorporate student voice in your classroom this year? There's so many different ways, and let me know in the comments, on Twitter, somewhere. How are you going to get your students engaged not only in written word, but also using their voice and you modeling that for them? Because some of these tools, remember, can be you as the teacher modeling first and then allowing them to engage by responding in reflection. And if you like some of the things that you have heard, not only in this session, but some of the other sessions that you have heard throughout this conference, I would encourage you to contact the Shake Up Learning team. Casey and all of us pictured here, we are excited to be able to present this conference to you guys, and we would love to work with you in person or virtually, whatever fits the protocols of your school. We would love to come and consult with you. If you're a tech coach and need help, we would love to provide those types of services and trainings. Google, Wakelet, curation, Chromebooks, one-to-one. So many talents in this group of ladies right here, and I'm just honored to be a small part of it, and we encourage you to take the link and let us know how we can help you as we move forward. So I encourage you to research, take a look at how you can incorporate student voice in your classroom or in your professional learning this year, and enjoy the rest of the conference. I hope you find some sessions that help you along and give you some great ideas for the 21-22 school year. Thanks for watching, and we will see you again soon. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Bye-bye.